Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our review of NCIS Season 20, Episode 7, Love Lost. I almost always screw up when I try to say that out loud. Too much of a tongue twister for me. Also, really big news on the three-part crossover event coming in early January with this show, Hawaii, Los Angeles, all coming together.
Yeah, and for people who love crossovers, this is going to be a really good one. I mean, this is pretty exciting. We very rarely over the years have gotten any types of crossovers, and we've already had one this year.
All right, well, before we get into any of this, go ahead, hit that subscribe button. We will be here talking about NCIS through the rest of this season. There's going to be a really seemingly interesting one next week, kind of set around Thanksgiving. So we don't want you guys to miss that.
And follow us over on Instagram, Matt and Jess TV.
Okay. Can we just let's just start with the crossover news, because I know this really shattered a lot of minds when it came out. Here's what we know about this right now. It's happening January 2nd, so it's just it's kicking off the new year with pretty much a bang right away.
It's going to be really exciting.
Yeah, LA usually airs on Sundays, but basically what they're doing this time is okay, we don't want to spread this out into multiple nights. We're going to air all three shows on one night. If you guys watched our video at the start of the season talking about the premiere crossover, one of the things that we were really annoyed about was that they basically took the Raven and NCIS story and then tossed it over on Hawaii, which really had no business dealing with it.
Yeah, if you guys watch that video, you guys know that I'm not typically a crossover person. If I am not watching another show, I don't want to jump into another show 10 seasons in, 5 seasons in, I want to be able to make the choice if I want to watch another show. So, yeah, that NCIS story, that was all about the Raven. They had set that up. It was sort of the first big arc that we really got since Gibbs left the show.
Yeah.
And they finished it off over on Hawaii. And because I don't watch Hawaii and I don't like to be forced to watch another show that I'm not watching, I never saw how it ended. So amazing.
Well, okay, here's the good news with this is that it seems like this story is going to be very much self-contained.
And that's awesome.
Yeah, it's about a professor and a case involving them that has ties to all the different shows. Apparently this professor helped to train various agents all over the country, so it's not plucking off some story that's on one of the different shows. I hope that this one could prove to be, I think, pretty fun, standalone. I don't always love crossovers, but I'm more interested in this one than I am the premiere one, with everything that we have already said about the Raven.
Yeah, I think it's important if you're going to do a crossover where you want to entice people who haven't watched the show yet, instead of forcing them where it's oh man, I'm already invested in the story and now I have to watch it. You just have to have a really good story that is self-contained. So it's not like Grey's Anatomy and Station 19, where every single week is a crossover, basically, and if you don't watch both shows, you're lost.
Okay. As we move into episode 7, I'll just start here by saying that maybe the problem is me. Maybe it is my fault going into this episode that I had really elevated expectations as to what could happen, because we got this whole story about the Secretary of the Navy. Did she kill her husband? Her husband thought she was trying to. I really thought that we were building up towards something that was going to drastically change the entire Department of Defense here.
I'm gonna be honest here. I didn't like this episode. It felt like, when you're sick and you're on the couch and you're watching through shows like NCIS that do have these episodes that are sort of they're all self-contained. It's, TV comfort food. You get in, you watch it, and you're out, and you may not remember it because you have a fever and you're just not feeling that great. I don't have any of those things, and I don't think I'm going to remember this episode. This episode just kind of came and went, and I was just kind of it didn't hit me, which was really disappointing because I love this show. And a lot of these episodes are bangers every week where I'm like, oh, this is really cool. This is a cool story. This is a cool concept. Even if it's a concept that they've recycled, they have found ways to make it new and fresh. And for the past couple of years, they've been really spoiling us
Yeah.
with stories that also connect to the agents. So for the past few years, they've gotten me really invested in them. Now, I know that there was always going to be more episodes like this, where this is a procedural, that there would
Yeah.
be just a self-contained episode. But the story just wasn't enough for me to really remember this.
Yeah, there was no like personal side plot. There was no like knight in shining Palmer moment. There was no opportunity to even just to like learn a tiny bit about one of the agents outside of the job. It doesn't have to be something that dramatically impacts the case. It doesn't even have to be something that they pick up next week or the week after. It's just this show really thrives on that depth beyond just the case, about getting us into the minds of the agents, letting us know who they are. Because, like, let's face it, there were not 200 suspects in this episode. It was always going to be one of the characters who we met. In the moment that I saw that son-in-law guy, I was just like, all right, he did it. That's it. The end.
Yeah, it was very predictable. It was the same thing. Oh, I'm a sponsor and I'm
Yeah.
also dealing with the same issue. I was just like, yeah, it's him. It's not going to be the daughter. It's obviously not going to be the wife, and it's not himself. So who else is there? There's only this one person. It was put together in a way that was just a little too predictable. And I know that on NCIS, they normally do give you enough information that if you really dig through, you can figure out who it is. But usually it's not quite that obvious. Sometimes yes, but not usually. Usually there is a little bit of a digging where you're kind of like, I thought maybe, but man, they really took a twist over here where then
Yeah.
I was like, nah, it's not that person. But here we are. It is that person. That didn't happen in this episode. It was just straight up that person.
Yeah, we really went in a straight line here from, okay, here is Felix the husband, here is the Secretary of the Navy. The whole premise of this episode was that, she was quote unquote trying to kill him. And so just like from the basis of that alone, they weren't probably going to make her the killer at the end of it. So they had to
No.
find a way to introduce like a couple of little twists along the way.
Yeah, and they just didn't work. I mean, that's just my opinion. This was one of the weakest episodes that I've seen, and it hurts my heart to say that because if you guys have been with us for a while, or even if you're new here, we really love the show. We've been covering the show for a really long time, and we're really invested in this show. So to have an episode like this where it's like, wah wah, I'm not gonna remember it. The plot was very predictable. We knew who it was gonna be, and at the end, Felix and his wife were like, "And we'll still be friends." Cool. I think the biggest misstep of this whole thing, besides making who did this pretty predictable, is there wasn't enough involvement for me in the wife and the husband and what they were going through. So by the time they
Yeah.
got to the end where they were like, you know what, we didn't work as a couple, but we're gonna try to work it out as friends, that I would have felt more where I'd be like, oh, ow, yes, cool. But I just didn't feel that because I just wasn't invested enough. And yeah, they didn't put enough into these characters for me to care. They made Felix just a little bit too odd for
Yeah.
me to really make any connection with. So I don't know. For me, this one just didn't do it for me.
They had that moment where the Navy secretary was just like, "Do you want to know how I first got interested in him in the first?" Like, yes, actually, I really do because I don't understand this relationship at all. But okay, here's the really positive news because yes, this episode not great. We mentioned it earlier. Next week, Thanksgiving, tied in. Do you want a reason over? Co-wrote this upcoming
It's
episode.
gonna be very cool.
There's going to be a chance to see Jessica Knight's sister. There
Mhm.
is like, that's the thing this episode was lacking. Personal information, context, reasons to root for these people.
Yeah, the only personal stuff we had is this box of nonsense with like this little stuffed monkey that's like boop. And they're all laughing about it. I'm like, okay, this has nothing to do with anything. We didn't even get anything. It was kind of dry on the personal stuff, but a Thanksgiving episode has lots of potential for lots of good stuff. But if you guys are looking for another show that kind of has the same kind of feel, it has some mysteries and
Yeah.
whodunits a little bit, we are covering Yellowstone here at the channel, and it just premiered last night. It had 2 episodes. It is a very, very, very good show. And so, yeah, check that out and watch that along with us.
And hit that subscribe button so you don't miss NCIS Yellowstone. All sorts of other good stuff
Mhm.
coming your way. And we'll see you here next time.